There was a secret substance in the medieval world, more valuable than gold, more dangerous than poison, and rarer than diamonds. It moved like water, shone like a mirror, and drove men insane. Most kings only heard rumors of it, but almost none ever saw it. Until now, neither have you. In the long corridors of medieval ambition, countless kings made demands that could bend the wills of their subjects, reorder the fields, and redirect rivers. They commanded armies and summoned scholars, collected relics, and built cathedrals. Yet there was one thing that not even the most powerful ruler of Europe could easily obtain. Not land, not jewels, not spices, perfumes, or silks brought across distant deserts. No, this was stranger, scarcer, a thing mentioned only in whispers in the halls of alchemists, in the letters of bewildered merchants, and in the inventories of treasuries where it was listed not as coin, nor ingot, nor weapon, but simply as a curiosity. The name of this elusive substance shifted through the centuries. Some called it the moon's metal. Others described it as silver that sweats, living quicksilver, the liquid dragon, or the blood of the earth that flees from touch. Today, we know it as mercury to the modern eye. Mercury is little more than something seen briefly in old thermometers, gleaming, fluid, and unsettling. But in the Middle Ages, it was so alien, so utterly unlike anything else on Earth, that those who encountered it questioned whether it even belonged to this world. It was neither solid nor water, yet it flowed like a river. It could dissolve gold, but refused to be grasped or contained. It refused to rust like iron or tarnish like silver. Crack a vial, and it would split into 100 beads, each reflecting torchlight like fallen stars. Try to smash it, and it would simply slide away. Imagine being the first medieval man to see it, crouched over a flickering candle in a stone workshop, watching the metal ripple upon itself like a living mirror. To understand how rare it was, one must first understand how hard it was to find. Mercury came from cinnabar, or a deep red rock that miners often mistook for powdered flesh. Only a handful of mines in all of Europe possessed it, most famously those in Almaden, Spain. The Romans had once used these mines, sending slaves into the caverns where cinnabar dust coated their lungs and turned their skin blotched and pale. Few survived long in such a place. By the Middle Ages, mining cinnabar was considered nearly suicidal, and so only the desperate went down. They chipped away at the bleeding rock, unaware that the shimmering smoke rising from their torches carried a silent poison. Those who handled raw mercury too often found their teeth loosening, their hands trembling, their speech slurred. Some developed fits of unprovoked laughter. Others tumbled into rages or sank into madness. Villagers whispered that the mines were cursed, that ghosts dwelled beneath the surface, turning men into beasts. They did not know, of course, that mercury crept into the blood and gnawed at the mind. Because of this danger, mining was slow and irregular. Even in prosperous times, production was tiny compared to iron, copper, or even gold. A king might boast of owning vaults of silver plate or chalices of gold. But if he possessed even a small vial of mercury, no more than a few spoonfuls, he would hold it up to guests, like a magician revealing a dragon's egg. More often, the kings never saw it at all. It was intercepted long before it reached them. Unlike other metals, mercury did not travel in ingots or bars. It required sealed vessels, wax-lined pouches, clay flasks, even sheep bladders tied shut with pitch. If the vessel cracked or opened, the liquid metal escaped, soaking into wood, sliding between floorboards, vanishing into dirt. Merchants often arrived with little more than stains to show for their trouble. Those rare shipments that survived went first not to palaces, but to the secretive chambers of alchemists. The alchemist of medieval Europe was not yet the wild-haired sorcerer of legend, nor the scientist of later centuries, but something strange in between. He was part scholar, part craftsman, part mystic. His workshop was cluttered with brass alembics, charred crucibles, flasks sealed with beeswax, dried herbs dangling from rafters and walls blackened by smoke. In one corner, lumps of lead and copper waited beside powdered sulfur. In another, a table covered in parchment was scrawled with diagrams of stars and planetary symbols. To the alchemist, metals were not merely materials, but living things. Lead was heavy and sullen, tied to Saturn. Silver belonged to the moon. Gold, brightest of all, was the flesh of the sun. But mercury was sacred. It was fluid, mutable, untouchable. It was neither male nor female, neither hot nor cold. It was the soul of change. It was the key to all transformations. An alchemist would spend weeks preparing for even the smallest experiment with mercury. He would grind cinnabar into powder, mix it with vinegar, salt, or the urine of goats, then heat it in sealed vessels to draw out the shimmering droplets. He would wear gloves of treated leather, wrap his face in cloth, hold his breath. Even so, the fumes crept in, and many alchemists found themselves trembling after long hours at the furnace. But once the mercury was purified, he would stare at it for hours. He would tilt the flask and watch the metal slide like a serpent. He would press gold leaf against its surface and see it vanish, swallowed whole. He would whisper that here, at last, was proof that metals could merge, that gold could be broken down, reformed, reborn. Kings sent letters demanding results, hoping that one day he would hand them not a scarce vial, but a method to turn all lead into gold. They rarely sent letters asking about the price of sanity. Kings who did manage to acquire mercury often had no idea what to do with it. Unlike swords or crowns, it could not be worn. It could not be minted into coins. It would simply melt through any mold. Some monarchs poured it into ornamental glass spheres and placed them on windowsills to catch the sun. Others instructed their physicians to experiment, leading to odd medical practices. Physicians mixed mercury with herbs and honey, believing its movement inside the body would chase away disease. Patients drank it, unaware of the cost. Royal courts observed men who had once been dignified counselors now muttering nonsense. They called it silver illness and quietly forbade further trials. Yet mercury never entirely vanished from royal circles. Its allure was too strong. In Byzantium, imperial scribes recorded a gift from a Persian prince, a silver flask of weeping metal. In China, centuries earlier, emperors had already chased immortality through mercury elixirs, some even commissioning entire rivers of mercury within their tombs. In the Islamic world, scholars wrote detailed treatises on its properties, translating older Greek texts and refining their knowledge. It was from these scholars that European alchemists learned many of their methods. Caravans crawling across the Silk Road often carried flasks wrapped in wool, hidden among spices and gems. A single ounce could buy a horse, even when kings requested it. Even when their treasurers paid dearly, the metal rarely made it into their hands. By the time it passed from miner to merchant, merchant to alchemist, alchemist to courier, the quantity had shrunk from a flask to a vial, from a vial to a droplet. Some rulers reacted with fury, accusing those beneath them of theft or deception. They ordered inspections of treasuries, searched for hidden compartments. They never considered that this metal, unlike gold, could not be locked away. It was too slippery, too volatile. It refused to be tamed. Those who encountered mercury often spoke of it as if it were alive. A monk from Burgundy once wrote of a flask gifted to his monastery by a noble patron. He claimed that when he opened it, the liquid rippled as though breathing. When he dipped his finger in, it recoiled from his touch like a frightened animal. The monks, fearing it was demonic, buried it beneath the cloister. A century later, a mason digging foundations uncovered the flask, still intact, and fled in terror. He swore he saw his reflection blink. Despite these tales, some craftsmen discovered practical uses for mercury. Artisans found that it could be mixed with tin to create a reflective surface, and so began the earliest mirror-making practice. Wealthy estates began to display polished panels that caught faces in unnatural clarity. Those who looked into them felt uneasy. Something about the shine was too perfect, too complete. They avoided staring too long. Meanwhile, far from courts and monasteries, miners kept hacking away at cinnabar, coughing blood into their hands. The mine owners, fat from profits, rarely descended into the depths. They knew only that the red ore fetched a good price, and that the buyers were impatient. Ships set sail from Spanish ports, carrying jars of mercury to Florence, Venice, Constantinople. Many never reached land again. If a storm cracked a barrel, the mercury spilled into the cargo hold, pooling and sloshing until it ate through the wood and vanished into the sea. Sailors spoke of ghost metals drifting beneath the waves. The rarity of mercury was not simply due to scarcity in the earth, but due to its refusal to obey the rules of trade. Gold sat where it was placed. Iron stacked neatly. Mercury defied containers. It demanded effort at every stage. Even those who possessed it could not always keep it. Records from a 14th century treasury in Prague describe an incident where a jar was opened for inspection, slipped from the clerk's hands, shattered on the table, and scattered its contents into the cracks of the floor. Servants spent hours chasing the beads with feathers and spoons. They recovered only half. As the centuries passed, more kings heard rumors of this liquid metal, but never saw it. It became a legend of the wealthy, a thing spoken of at banquets, alongside tales of exotic beasts. One lord claimed he had seen a pool of it large enough to drown in. Another insisted it could be frozen into a solid. They lied, knowing their guests could never prove otherwise. Those who truly possessed mercury learned to say little. Better to be cautious. Better not to draw attention to such a dangerous treasure. Eventually, as Europe crawled toward the Renaissance, knowledge began to spread. Scholars translated Arabic and Greek texts. Alchemists compared notes across borders, and slowly, the mystique of mercury weakened. It was still rare, still perilous, but no longer wholly unknown. Yet by then, the kings who had longed for it most were dead. Their sons and grandsons inherited thrones not filled with rivers of liquid metal, but with ledgers, noting small quantities sealed in storerooms. Carefully labeled, rarely touched, and so it became that one of the strangest, most mesmerizing metals in history slipped through the Middle Ages largely unseen by the very people who sought it most. Kings could command armies, but they could not command mercury. It flowed through their grasp like water through fingers, shining, vanishing, refusing to be owned. It belonged only to itself. And there you have it, another quiet journey through the forgotten corners of history. If you drifted off somewhere along the way, that's perfectly fine. That means it worked. And if you stayed awake till the end, well, you're officially tougher than a medieval alchemist. If you'd like more slow, strange stories just like this one, please consider supporting the channel. A simple like helps more than you'd think. And if you subscribe to Quiet Boring Sleep, I'll keep the history soft, slow, and just boring enough to send you peacefully into the night. Thank you for being here. Rest well, dream quietly, and I'll see you in the next dull adventure.